Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. Let's talk about last night, shall we? If you haven't already, make sure to hit like and subscribe. It would be very much appreciated as we try and get towards 50,000 subscribers. So if you haven't for any reason already done so, drop down below, hit both of those buttons. It's absolutely free. And let's get on with this, sadly. So let's try and talk about last night, shall we? I know it's very frustrating. A lot of people probably still not recovered from what was a massive disappointment for Celtic last night in the Champions League. It finished Feyenoord 2, Celtic 0. In case you missed it, we were the masters of our own downfall. Once again in Europe, Celtic had a really good opportunity ahead of them to try and take something from a side that we went toe-to-toe with for a large portion of the game. But with two stupid red cards, a goal conceded right on the brink of half-time, which should never be conceded, Celtic once again left asking themselves the question, why do we keep doing this? What is the problem? And how do we fix it? It seems like it's something that's not going to go away. Our Champions League record has been abhorrent, to say the least. One win in our last 22 Champions League games. It's not good enough. It transcends managers and squads. It's a problem which is ingrained deep within the club. And honestly, the only way out of it is, for some people, spending more money. And we're going to talk about that today because a lot of frustrations have been put forward towards the board and our transfer department for not getting the job done, not equipping us with the right tools to go and win these games. So we're going to try and cover a few aspects of that today, just the overall frustration, and come to some sort of conclusion if there should be any. Just a quick recap on last night. Of course, my match review is live on the channel. You can go and watch that for a more in-depth take on the football itself. But I was, up until that first goal was conceded, I was really happy with how Celtic were keeping themselves in the game. I thought that we kept the game close. Feyenoord didn't look anything special. And honestly, up until that goal was conceded, I thought that the game was there for the taking in the second half for Celtic. But once again, we shoot ourselves in the foot. We give away a goal which no top-tier team should be conceding in the Champions League. And if we want to consider ourselves a top-tier team, we have to eradicate these errors. A Joe Hart blunder, he's not in the right position, the wall parting, all of these things add up, and you can say what you like about refereeing decisions and all of that, but at the end of the day, we would have probably shot ourselves in the foot one way or another through that or through anything else. So we showed in that opening 45 that we have enough to face these teams, finding ourselves in a position where we can go toe-to-toe with them. But we need to stop this. We need to eradicate this helplessness from the side. We go in and we just don't help ourselves. We make things harder, we make things worse. And it's just getting beyond a joke at this point. The second half, to talk about that very quickly, we get 2 red cards. I mean, wow. This just sums everything up, doesn't it? 2 very stupid positions to be in. Brendan Rodgers spoke about it in his post-match press conference, and he put it down to inexperience, and I think that is probably a big part of it. Obviously, Odin Holm and Gustav Lagerbielke on their Champions League debuts, making errors that see them get red cards, and you can say what you like about them being reds or not. The first one more in particular there, bit of a discussion as to whether or not that should have been a sending off. But, we're giving the referee that decision to make, and Cal McGregor spoke about how the referees in Europe aren't as lenient, and that's true. You're giving them a decision to make, and I can't really fault them for the decision that they made. And having 9 men on the park, you're giving yourself absolutely no chance. And even with saving a penalty and all the rest of it, we dug ourselves a hole that we couldn't get out. And we need to avoid that. We can't be making these stupid mistakes and split-second decisions which sway the game dramatically in the opposition's favour. The inexperienced situation, it's not good to be in, and that's what we're going to talk about, what we're signing and if it's good enough to challenge in Europe. See, a lot of people getting on the back of Gustav Lagerbielke, for example, giving it him stinking for getting sent off, and talking about how he's a project player, etc, etc, and I'm going to acknowledge all of that in a moment. But I see a lot of people getting on the back of Celtic for signing such a young guy. Let's just be clear, in a perfect scenario, that wouldn't have been our starting centre-halves. last night. Gustav Lagerbielke, if everyone was fit, wouldn't have been starting the game. We signed Nat Phillips for a reason, because he was more experienced, because he was better equipped for these sorts of games, playing for a massive club like Liverpool. It was just unfortunate he rolled his ankle at the weekend. I reckon he probably would have started the game yesterday over Gustav Lagerbielke if he didn't do that. Also, Cameron Carter-Vickers and Mike Nawrowski being out is massive. It takes a dramatic effect on the starting 11 we were able to field. So it's unfortunate. I feel sorry for Gustav Lagerbielke at the same time, because he did have a solid enough first half. I thought him and Scales played well together. But yeah, it doesn't reflect well on him, that red card, but I'm hoping he bounces back, and I have confidence he will bounce back. But just a very unfortunate position for Celtic to be in, not having, 2 or 3 centre-halves who probably would have played ahead of him. Right, we need to talk about the thing that has created the most discussion after that loss last night, and it's whether or not Celtic are doing enough to compete in the Champions League, and is there a blame game here on the Celtic board for not investing in the side properly? And I think the quick answer is probably yes. We aren't signing Champions League ready players to allow us this opportunity, and for the best part of now 20 years Celtic haven't been able to compete in Europe because the transfer model isn't exactly helping us compete in Europe. It's very hard to take a level-headed look at this, because the Celtic fan in you wants to lambast the club and lambast the people making these decisions. But at the other side of it, you look at the reason we do shop in these markets, and it's so that we obviously run a business which is profitable. And but as a Celtic fan, it's getting frustrating. I was one who was slightly more optimistic about the transfer window just past, but I think that it's hard to ignore now after watching last night that Celtic haven't put the money in the right areas, and we haven't signed the required talent to actually give it a go against sides like Feyenoord. Let's have a look at what the manager said in response to this last night. He was asked in the post-match press conference whether or not he was happy with the business that Celtic conducted in the summer transfer window. And this obviously falls after those fantastic financial reports that were published last week. But financial reports aside, does it help us as a club? Well, this is what the manager had to say. It's not for me to talk about right now. I'm only thinking about the game. It's great for the club. It shows the stability, how well it's run, how well the board have done over a number of years. The strategy really works, but my job is to look after the football team. So, do you know what? I'm trying to look at this and trying to gather an opinion on where Brendan Rodgers lies on it, because he's not came out and said whether it's good or bad. And I don't know if that's maybe hiding his true thoughts as to whether or not he's been backed properly in that summer window, or whether he is happy or not with what's been done. I can't really take from his comments where he currently stands, because he'll be feeling the disappointment after last night. He'll probably know that with things maybe being a bit better that we could challenge. But he's obviously not going to come out and say that. He's not going to come out and criticise the board that gave him his job back. It's a really tough position for him to be in as a manager when asked that question. Now, for us as fans, it's a lot easier for us to voice our opinions. Here was some of the highlights from Celtic's financial report for the year ending June 2023. Revenue increasing by 35.8% to £120 million almost, which was up from £88 million. Profit before taxation, £40.7 million, which meant we ended the year with a cash total of £72.3 million. So in that statement, our profits increasing by over 600%. A lot of money. That's one of the key things in there. Profit before taxation. It's went up from 6.1 million to 40.7 million pounds. Now, why is that the case? The big difference, making the Champions League. That's the key reason why we have seen such an increase in money. Massive difference from Europa League to Champions League. £40.7 million before taxation. Have Celtic set themselves up with that money to be ready for the Champions League? Probably not. I don't want to come across as hypocritical to what I was saying at the end of the transfer window, because I was happy with how the window went. But now that you can sit down and have a bit of perspective on it, and once again, try to be level-headed, I'm not going in two-footed here, because there's still 5 games to play, and who knows, by match day 6 we might be in a lot happier of a situation. But I think that the fans and the people who are being very vocal about this have a right to be pissed off, because we're not seeing the money spent the way we would like it. It is difficult for us to go out there and sign players. We're not an attractive move compared to other places around Europe. That's the reality that we need to face. But have the board put the effort in to prepare ourselves for the Champions League? That is up for debate. There's no dispute about that. You know, that is up for debate. I think that you could argue that we're not giving ourselves a chance. Now, the money that we have made by making the Champions League logically should be reflected in the money we spend to fight in the Champions League. We spent, 25 million pounds in the window, which is a decent sum of money, but did we spend it in the right places? Have we focused too much on projects that we want to make profit on in the future rather than players who are going to give us success in Europe? That's what everybody's getting their knickers in a twist about right now, and it's hard to say, well, you shouldn't be, because at the end of the day, it makes us see what we've seen last night, a 2-0 defeat where we shoot ourselves in the foot on the biggest stage of them all. I think that the anger has to be directed in the right places, and I'm going to talk about the places that it has also been directed where I feel it shouldn't be in a moment, but for now, yeah, direct your anger at the board, direct your anger in places like that, because they aren't obviously doing what we want to see, and that's us signing players who are going to equip us properly for the Champions League. And after seeing those financial reports published last week, it does make it all the more frustrating, because we know the money is there to go out and do that. You look around the rest of Europe, you even look at Feyenoord, they're signing higher quality players. Somebody like Calvin Stengs, who they signed for €6 million. You know, Celtic, not saying they could land a Calvin Stengs. I think Feyenoord is probably a more attractive move, but you know, should we be shopping around similar markets for players who have known quality there? Maybe so. He scored against Celtic last night. None of our new signings scored against Feyenoord. So, yeah, it's tricky, because you've got to look at it as a devil's advocate to it all. Then you know, you've got to admit that Celtic's not an easy place to attract top players playing in Scotland and obviously struggling in Europe. But if you want to strive to make that happen, then maybe the money has to be spent and trying to fish for these bigger players. It's just such a horrible middle ground to be in, because we're not at the bottom of the barrel, but we're not the creme de la creme. It's just horrible. And like, we probably don't know the beginning of how difficult it is to go out and start a conversation with the players we'd ideally like to sign. So I do understand why we don't do it, but I think just facing this European disaster year after year and the disappointment that it comes with, it makes you sit here and wish that we could go out and push the boat a little further. After all, Brendan Rodgers came in on the understanding that we were going to try and do better in Europe and challenge in Europe. We're never going to do that with the transfer model that we currently have going on, and that's the honest truth. It's going to be very interesting to see how the club operates in January and next season. After Brendan Rodgers' comments last night, I genuinely do believe that he will want to speak to the board and trying to get better players, because he's not going to get any further with the side that he's got just now and the signings we're making just now. So I believe he will have to say something. Not in a way that would jeopardise his position as Celtic manager or anything like that, but just something to kind of enlighten them and show them that we should be doing what other clubs are doing, and we're not. So yeah, I think January next year will be very, very important, and that will give us an indication as to where we are. That is his first summer after all. The board haven't dived in and backed him in the manner that some expected straight away, and I'm not surprised by that. But it'll be a big January, it'll be a big summer next year. But we need to change things. We need to push the boat out a little further, because we're just going to be stagnant in Europe year after year, like we have been for the last 20, unless Peter Lawwell, Dermot Desmond, Michael Nicholson and the rest of them realise that, you know, the fans want more, because we need more. And other areas to touch, I wanted to touch on this. We need a bit of calm. Some people losing the rag and directing it at the wrong places. For example, Luis Palma last night, he didn't have a great game. It wasn't the best start that you're going to see from him. in a Celtic shirt, but it's nice to see that people are keeping it totally normal and writing him off straight away. Not good enough. Shouldn't be playing for Celtic after 45 minutes in the Champions League against the Dutch champions. The guy has not had an opportunity yet to show us all his talents, and he will show us all his talents. And it's not going to come straight away. It's not going to come in his first 45 minutes against one of the champions of a European nation. But people saying that he's not good enough, that he's a dud, that we've wasted money, etc., etc. Look, I get it. He wasn't great last night. I wasn't impressed with what I seen, but I think to kind of throw him away and discard him already is absolutely nuts. Crazy, to be honest. Yeah, we need to see improvement quickly. If he plays against Livingston or other domestic games, we need to see that. But my God, no. Like, let's not start this again. Things were starting to get better after the Derby win. Why revert back to situations where you think of players like that? And the whole Rio Hatate discourse that's going on has been a right sore head this morning. Once again, I get it. Wasn't great last night, but suddenly he's rotten and shouldn't play for Celtic. That's the take of some people. I've seen it in my comment section. I've seen it in social media all day. People saying that he thinks he's too good for Celtic. His attitude stinks and all the rest of it. David Turnbull's a better player. Like, no offence to David Turnbull. This isn't the angle I'm trying to take on it all. But Rio Hatate is an incredibly good footballer who had a poor game last night after returning for his first start from an injury that kept him on the sidelines for a few weeks. He didn't look fit enough. It's not an excuse either, but he wasn't good enough last night. Doesn't mean that his attitude stinks and he shouldn't be playing for Celtic. And I've seen a lot of that. Once again, anger directed in the wrong ways, at the wrong people. We do need these players to step up in these games, absolutely, but to suddenly say that they're not good enough to play for Celtic is just a wild conclusion to jump to. Ultimately, we need another good result this weekend. An away win at Livingston would be huge for morale. It would be huge to kind of calm things a little bit. I don't think this is anywhere near the level of meltdown that we saw after the St Johnstone and Kilmarnock results. I think that a lot more people are like myself and understanding that last night wasn't a game that Celtic should have had expectation to win in. Being away from home to the Dutch champions, it was always going to be a tough game, and a loss was always something that I was fully prepared for. It's just a manner of throwing away the game that makes it a lot worse. So it's frustrating, yeah, but we need a big win on Saturday. I mean, losing that game would be horrendous. I think that we could see very toxic turn again. I just hate being in that weird limbo right now between happy and toxic. Happy after the derby, toxic after a European loss. I can't be all chopping and changing. I am still... You can decide for yourself if it's rightfully or not, but I'm still optimistic about this season. And yeah, get a good result on Saturday, please. That would do. Right, a very talky video today. Not a lot of stats and graphics and yada yada to throw up on screen. It's been a lot of trying to debate with my own mind where we are right now and what we should do moving forward. So yeah, it's been a very kind of blah 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 sort of video. All talk, nothing else. All fart, no poo, you could say. But aye, it's just get the football back Saturday. Give me actually football to talk about. Thank you. Right, that's it. Like and subscribe. I'll see you all next time.